Welcome to our first video in our series of upcoming videos on the Australian national electricity market. Through these videos, we'll attempt to explain many of the more complex features of the market, especially those pertaining to renewable generation and those that affect batteries' energy storage systems. My name is Harley Mackenzie and I'm the Managing Director of Hard Software. My background is in mechanical engineering and I have an applied mathematics PhD in the modelling of combustion systems. Since then I've also worked in risk management and the aviation industry and as the principal operations research analyst for one of the large Victorian generators just before the privatisation happened in the Victorian market. Since then we started Hard Software about 20 years ago to provide the trading, bidding, control systems and analysis tools that people need to trade effectively in the national electricity market. Our first topic is optimisation systems, the myth versus the reality for renewable generation. This has become a very interesting topic of late because there's been a lot of people in the market expounding the benefits of optimisation and what it can do for renewable generators. This video is an attempt to explain some of the facts behind optimisation in the context of renewable generation and what can it do for you and what can't it do for you. Obviously, we're not going to be considering more complex systems such as those generators that provide ancillary services and energy storage systems where optimisation systems can provide a very good means of managing and trading those systems. So we'll be concentrating this video on a solar farm or a wind farm or some simple generator that operates in the Australian national market and wishes to determine if an optimisation system would help their requirements. Although we'll be talking specifically about the Australian electricity market, a lot of these principles will apply to any optimisation system in any competitive electrical market. The first thing they claim they are able to do is predict the market better than other alternative systems. The second thing is that they claim that they can optimise the trading position of any of the renewable generators. And thirdly, the most important one is that they claim that they can make you more money or they can prevent you losing money. Let us consider the first claim. How can an optimisation system predict the market better than anybody else? First of all, there is a problem in the Australian electrical market that is going to be fixed soon, but makes optimisation systems always an approximation of what happens in reality. At the moment, we are dispatched in the Australian national market on a 5-minute basis. However, until July 2021, we'll be settled using the averaged quantities of 6 dispatch intervals, making a 30-minute trading interval. This distinction between dispatch intervals and trading intervals is a very important concept to understand because it makes the job of any system that's trying to trade automatically a little more, well, quite a lot more difficult. Basically, in any particular half-an-hour trading interval, you can work out what the price is, what the price of ancillary services are, all the various factors that go into it, but you won't know exactly how much that will cost you or make you money because, say you're in the middle of the third dispatch interval within the half-hour trading interval, you know what it is now for the current dispatch interval. You know what's been in the previous 2 dispatch intervals, but you don't know what's going to happen in the final 3 dispatch intervals that make up the total of 6 dispatch intervals in the trading interval. There are ways of estimating those and forecasting those, and a lot of the people that selling optimisation systems will tell you that they do a great deal of machine learning and other artificial intelligence operations to be able to give you an accurate prediction of what those final 3 dispatch interval quantities are going to provide. And that could be your generation, it could be what other people are going to be generating, it could be prices, so anything that determines how much you will or won't make in the market. I'm going to have a brief discussion of what is actually machine learning, because it's artificial intelligence, machine learning, a lot of these buzzwords, reinforcement learning, convoluted neural networks, they're thrown around with abandon in these contexts, but what do they actually do? Quite simply, a neural network or a machine learning technique will take various inputs, and picking which inputs are significant or not is part of the art of machine learning, and basically getting the results that happened at the end of that process. So for every 5 minutes, say, you can get all the prices, all the generation, all the other factors that are significant in determining what your future price and what your future revenue or generation will be, and basically reverse engineer it. So basically it comes up with a whole set of weights and determines what the outcome was, and then back propagates. So for instance, in a particular dispatch interval, the price was $50, there was this many people generating, you were generating 50 megawatts, and basically the result was an output, which could be price, it could be generation, and you basically get the real one that actually happened, and then apply that back to the set of inputs so that you get the answer. So this simple concept is applied over various, as many data intervals as you possibly can, to come up with a generic model that will work for the circumstances that you had the input data. There's a couple of factors about this that need to be carefully considered. First of all, you need a lot of data. That's one of the factors. Luckily, the electricity market's really good at producing data. So we have 5 minute intervals. We can do it at the 5 minute resolution. We can get thousands of points available. That's great, but unfortunately the electricity market is not a static thing. It changes all the time. There are changing conditions, various transmission lines could be in or out. The interconnector between states is a very big, obvious example, but there's a lot more subtle ones. People are putting new generation on all the time, especially renewable generation, and all of these factors mean that looking at data 3 years ago and saying that is a good predictor of what will happen today becomes less and less valid as time goes on. The other thing is, if we take all of the data that we had for the last couple of years to produce our neural network, and we train our neural network to produce a really good representation of those results, that we have the real results, so we've got historical data, and apply them in the future, there's a couple of real simple gotchas that we've got to be considering. First of all, let's consider pre-dispatch. It'd be really good if we could predict in the next 5 minutes and subsequent dispatch intervals what will be the regional price in a particular region. And if you knew that, that would be really good information. Now, I've actually studied this particular problem. I've taken AEMO produces a pre-dispatch for every 5 minutes, and they produce it at the half-hour level for some other things. So can we take AEMO's prediction, train our neural network with a whole lot of other variables, and improve on the predictions that AEMO publishes as part of their whole pre-dispatch process? Now, the pre-dispatch process at AEMO is quite a sophisticated system. It considers constraints, it actually runs the dispatch engine over the various offers that are put into the market by all of the generators. And we don't have access to a lot of the information that AEMO has. We cannot see on a particular day what somebody has bid for that day. We can see it the day after, and we can do it retrospectively, but we cannot see that information on the actual day of operation. So they have a lot more information. They have constraint formulations, like when a transmission line is going to get overloaded, when it's going to overheat, and they take all that into account in pre-dispatch. Now, as I said, I've studied this. I've taken a machine learning project, taken the forecast from AEMO, especially on price in a region, and you can get a marginal improvement on what AEMO publishes, with a couple of very serious caveats. First of all, there are some events no machine learning or any forecasting algorithm can predict. These are when a transmission line will hit a limit, when a transmission line will trip, a generator trips, a load trips. All of these events have significant impact on the market, great effects on what the outcomes are, and no one can predict them. AEMO can't predict them, they're not in their pre-dispatch, and you can't predict them with machine learning. Absolutely not. So there's a limit. And unfortunately, it's those serious events that make a big difference in the market and a big difference to your bottom line. The other serious problem is that we may train our model, we're using all of the data from the last 3 years, which is working fine. I was getting in my experiments about 10 to 20% improvement on pre-dispatch, and then something changes in the system. Good example of this, on the 18th of January, South Australia separated from the rest of the market, and suddenly the great forecasting technique that I was using to produce wonderful predictions suddenly produced very strange results for South Australia. Now you may say that's obvious. South Australia was islanded, so it's going to have a very different market running at that time. So it was obvious that it wouldn't work in that instance. But if you were running an automated optimization system, is that obvious? Does the system specifically check for certain conditions to say, hey, the forecasting system I developed over the last 3 years won't work in this circumstance, I should go back to AEMO's pre-dispatch? You can write checks like that in your program, but that means anticipating every single significant event that could happen in the Australian national market. The national market, like every electrical system, is probably the most complex interconnected system in humanity. There are so many different pieces and everything, it's very difficult to imagine anticipating everything. So what I'm saying is, you can improve on, say, AEMO's pre-dispatch. You can take weather conditions into account, transmission lines, lack of reserve conditions, all those things, which AEMO does in their pre-dispatch, I'll mention. And you can make a marginal improvement as if things stay normal. However, when there's an event no one can predict, it's not going to help you. And the more dangerous thing is that there is the risk that you will apply that model that you have in inappropriate circumstances. And as long as someone's watching what it's producing, or you have checks and balances to make sure it's producing non-crap, you'll have a problem. It will be producing rubbish, and that rubbish will be feeding into your optimization process, and you will get incorrect optimization results. Garbage in, garbage out. Let's consider the next thing that optimization systems claim to do, and that is to implement trading strategies. Again, just reminding you, we're talking about simple renewable generators here, solar and wind farms, not ancillary services, not energy storage. Really, there are two trading strategies for a renewable generator: produce as much as you possibly can or turn off. So there's really a case of accurately determining in any particular 5-minute interval, and therefore a good estimation of a trading interval, which is 30 minutes long, which is what you actually get paid on, that we can calculate our revenues or losses accurately for that period, forecast using the best available forecast, and I would argue that is AEMO's forecast, and produce a accurate revenue estimation. Now we need to consider all the factors in that. We need to consider how much income I'm making from LGC, that is generation certificates, how much I make from my PPA. Do I have a responsibility to my PPA partner to not expose them to negative prices? So the two factors, as I just alluded to there, that we really need to be watching out for are negative energy prices, which everybody sees and can usually deal with, and the ones that aren't quite so obvious. And they're things like generators in the Australian market are required to pay FCAS contingency raise services, and they are solely responsible for that. How much you are generating at a particular time as a proportion of where that constraint applies to determines how much of those contingency services you pay for. Again, 18th of January in South Australia was an example of where the raise services went to the maximum pool price, which was $14,750. The energy price in some intervals was high, but wasn't as consistent. Therefore, the trading strategy for a number of those intervals would be to turn off. And yet a lot of generators incurred a lot of lost revenue in those particular instances, and it cost them a lot of money. That's the sort of thing that isn't so much an optimization problem, but is a revenue determination problem. We need to, as best as we can in the limitations of a 5-minute value and approximating that to the half-hour trading interval, determine whether we are making money or we are losing money. And then we either bid out of the market when we want to turn off, or we bid to the lowest pull price, the floor, which is negative $1,000, and maximise our generation. It's quite simple. Now let's consider our third point. It makes us money, stops us losing money. As I've already alluded to in the previous point, if we know how much we make in a particular interval, that is what we need to know. There isn't anything else that really can affect what's happening to you. So basically, it's not so much optimizing out of a whole field of 20 different trading strategies and determining which is the best one or not for a single generator. Obviously, portfolio generators or FCAS markets, or even battery energy storage, that will complicate matters, and I do believe there are quite a number of different trading strategies that are appropriate there. But for a simple generator, those do not apply. So no optimizer is able to improve upon that. There are some complications that you might want to consider, such as what are the terms of your PPA, what's your PPA partner's position, and those things can be incorporated into that decision, but it's still a fundamental, am I losing money or making money, or am I satisfying my contract with a third party? So they're the things you can do. There's not much more to it than that. So which leads us to what can hard software do for you? I did earlier indicate that we do have a self-interest here, and I openly declare that we do provide bidding systems that can determine your revenue accurately and then make a recommendation, either manual recommendation or automatically submitting the bid to change between those two strategies of maximum generation or no generation. We've designed these systems to be very flexible. We can incorporate a number of different factors into it, as many as you can be creatively negotiated with your PPA partner, and able to take the nuances of anything that you might write in a contract to accurately provide a revenue estimation. When I was the operations research analyst for Renewable Energy, we had a serious outage in our switchyard, and the system I provided then was accurately able to determine, and they had retail as well as wholesale market exposure, what exactly was our position? How much was it going to cost us? How much coverage did we need to purchase from another generator? All those sorts of considerations were based solely on our accurate determination of how much we were losing in the next half hour and how much and what we could do about that. So our system isn't the most wonderful reinforcement learning, convoluted, deep learning, artificial neural network. It's basically working out what you make in a particular trading interval and what you lose in a particular trading interval, and then bidding accordingly. Thank you for watching this video. We'll be putting out another video, hopefully on how do I choose a forecasting system for my solar or wind farm in the near future. So stay tuned and subscribe to our channel. Thank you.